So, and speaking of that, I know this is kind of, it's been a kind of a hot topic. Um, when people weren't, speaking up, you had some, you know, uh, the gentleman from CNN was calling out a whole bunch of celebrities that weren't speaking up.
Yeah.
And then, then we just saw on the new Dave Chappelle special, he explained why he wasn't speaking up. I kind of felt maybe he watched your video and he kind of was like, okay. Um, but
I wish.
and even myself, I've been watching, especially in the beginning, I was watching some of my friends I knew. I've been watching some of the people I know on my timelines, and I'm looking with a side eye, a cross eye. I was looking at them all types of ways, like, oh, you guys are saying nothing, you know. Um, but then, watching your video, stuff like that. Um, you said it kind of beautifully, and you explained it very, very well. And it's pretty much separating silence from neutrality. So if you can, just go through that with us.
Yeah, I'll be honest and tell you, I was with you in that too, T. At first I wanted everyone to say something. It's like
Yeah.
all my non-black friends better be saying something and speaking up. But but
Mm-hmm.
then but then that was off of just straight emotion. Then I kind of
Yep.
pulled it back and said, okay, let's reevaluate. And I said it may be better if some people think about what they want to say and how they want to say it, rather than
Mm-hmm.
jumping right in and saying something. Particularly in
Right.
in a technological world with social media, you
Mm-hmm.
know how quickly someone says the wrong thing and they
Mm-hmm.
get torn to bits because of
Oof.
it. They
Yep.
get torn to bits. And now the last thing we would need is for that person to jump out and say something. And all of a sudden, they get
Mm-hmm.
hammered on social media. Now all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden, they want to say, they're not saying
Right. Right.
anything
Right.
anymore. That's it. I'm
Right.
done. I've gotten too hurt by this.
Mm-hmm.
This is not my fight, and I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want that. So I'd rather someone
Mm-hmm.
do something, think about it, figure it out, do your reading, watch the videos, talk offline, and
For
then
sure.
start to, because even that technically is not silence to me. Your voice doesn't have to be the one that breaks the silence. Your actions could break silence too. Everyone does things differently.
For
As long as
sure.
you're doing something, it's better than doing nothing. So I'd rather
Absolutely.
you be quiet for a little while, but you're doing the work as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to being neutral. Because
Right.
being neutral means that because you have no skin in the game, it's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
this is not my fight. I don't want
Not
to
to
pick a
fight.
side.
Mm-hmm.
By
Right.
not picking a side, you're picking a side. And one
Mm.
of the quotes that I
Mm-hmm.
used when I referenced that was Bishop Desmond Tutu, was that if an elephant stands on the tail of a mouse and the mouse looks at you for help and you say you're neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, there's a problem. An
Mm-hmm.
elephant is on this mouse's tail, and the mouse is looking at you, say, "Hey, can you help me
Mm-hmm.
out here, bro?" And you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
"All lives matter." That's a problem.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Clearly,
Big
there's
problem.
something wrong here. You have to address that. You can't be neutral. It's okay to say something's wrong here. Let's address what's wrong.
200%. And sometimes you get tired of trying to explain to people all lives matter versus Black Lives Matter. Like, if you can't understand that, then your whole perspective is whack. Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Um,
bars.
so that's super dope. So, me, I'm big on mental health. I'm big on self-love and preservation. And just you being somebody who people always go to, and I have to kind of have the same problems where it's well, not problems, but just the same situations where people always come to you for some type of inspiration, knowledge, mentorship, things like that, right? So, what have you done, um, you know, between COVID, and between all of the civil unrest these last, I mean, what are we in, like third or fourth month now, going on of all this
Yeah.
stuff? Like, what have you been doing to kind of keep yourself, and to preserve your mental health? I mean, you used to be in the gym 24/7. I used to see you going down my stories, and then I used to see The Rock going down my stories, all in the gym 24/7. And then now you don't have that. So what do you do?
Yeah. Yeah, man, I do miss my gym. Things are opening up slowly, so I'm gonna get myself back in there, man.
Hmm.
But in the meantime, as far as just protecting my own mental space,
Yes.
I try to unplug. I try to, as difficult as it is for me to do that. I mean, that
Right.
for me, that's a
Yeah.
lot because I
Hmm.
always want to be in the know. I want information as it comes out. I'm
For
on
sure.
Instagram. I'm on Twitter. I'm trying to find out everything as fast as possible.
Me too.
And I'm reading so much, and I want to make sure that when somebody calls me, I know what's happening already. It's because I
Hmm.
feel like they expect me to know, and I gotta just jump right in.
Yep.
And part of that adds to the trauma.
Hmm.
Because the more you're reading, the more you're watching, the more it's just in your head, and it's giving you that discomfort, and it's constantly on your mind and on your heart. It
Hmm.
affects my sleep sometimes, and then
Yeah.
having the conversations on top of that.
Hmm.
Trying to talk people through things, and they
Hmm.
coming to me, and you know, it's kind of like you think about like the superhero. I always say don't
Yeah.
say Superman
Hmm.
when he's in trouble. you
Exactly.
know, and
Another superhero.
trying to be everybody's Superman, and
Yeah. Hmm.
Superman's in trouble. If you're not, if it's not the Justice League, like
Yeah.
who's helping Superman? So
Exactly.
it's just like you can't always be there for everybody at all times. You have to really take
Hmm.
care of yourself too. So
Hmm.
a lot of times, man, I would put the phone down. I'm not on Twitter, or Instagram, or any other social media, Facebook. I'm not on it for the day. Like I'm done.
Hmm.
I'll put the phone down. I might answer some texts. I might get back to it later on. And I
Hmm.
just immerse myself into mindless TV. I'm watching a documentary. I'm doing something fun. I'm taking
Hmm.
care of what I have to do. So when I go visit my nieces, I could just listen to my nieces babble on about whatever they want to babble about and not worry
Yeah.
about what's going on outside in the world for that time I'm with them. I'm not thinking about that next occurrence that's happening. I'll leave the
Hmm.
phone on the table and let the messages come in, and I'll immerse myself in that because I need that refreshment, because
Right.
that recharge is so important, because
Hmm.
you can't keep burning the candle on both ends, and as much as you give, and how it is, man. When people
Yeah.
come, you pour it all out.
Pour it all
When do you
out.
get that
There's
back,
none
man?
left.
You
Yeah.
gotta recharge
Hmm.
that. You gotta recharge. You gotta recharge.
Hmm.
So for me, that's something that's easy that I do. Now that I don't have the
Hmm.
gym, I put the phone down, because when I'm at the gym, it's the same concept. My phone's in my bag, man. For 2 hours
Hmm.
or 3 hours or whatever time I'm in there, I'm offline. I don't know what's
Hmm.
going on. It doesn't matter. I'm focused
Hmm.
on this exercise right now. I'm focused on this rep,
Hmm.
on this set, on this workout. I'm on the
Hmm.
treadmill. I'm listening to a
Yep.
podcast. I'm listening
Hmm.
to a video. I'm not on social media. I'm still at the gym. I'll get to it later. The problems are still going to be there
Hmm.
when I get out anyway.
Right.
So that's something that I really, really try to do, because I need to.
Dope. And I feel like, especially with men, a lot of men internalize everything, and they internalize a lot of, there's no real release. Some people do go to the gym, right? But even when they go to the gym, it's still in here, right? And I feel like even you have a lot of people who don't exercise their mental or emotional health, and for me,
Right.
I do journaling, and I think we have to get away from this whole notion that if a man, journals, that's feminine, or if a man
Right.
expresses, that he's hurting, that's feminine, and so for me, I think it's very important, that you do unplug too. I think that's huge even for me, because it's like the social media is a big black hole. So I'll hit one link, and then next thing you know, I'm at the sublink to the sublink to the sublink to the sublink,
Yep.
and I look up and an hour and a half is gone of just watching content. And and a lot of that content is could be trauma. That's trauma in here, and that's trauma in here because it affects your emotions. So a lot of times, I do believe that men really do have to have different forms of expression and a release, and knowing when to unplug too, as well as the physical training.
Right.
So thank you for that, man. I really do appreciate that.
Of
Um,
course.
so let me see. We got a comment here from Patrice. What does she say? Oh, if all lives matter, you should be mad if a black life is taken. It's a life. I mean, I,
Correct.
I mean that's. 100% facts. Court
Ding, ding,
said,
ding. Yep.
court said, unplugging is needed to breathe. Constant information will cause an overload. I mean,
Yep.
that's exactly what we've been talking about. Um, so another thing I know that you did say is says you cannot afford to be ignorant, or it can cost you your life. Mm, that's a mouthful right there.
Yeah.
So yeah, talk to
Yeah.
me about that, brother.
Talking about just being black in this country and
Hmm.
not being able to afford to have a lack of information and lack of knowledge. You
Hmm.
know, um, when I watched one of the previous episodes with Sensei
Hmm.
Mark,
Yes.
speaking of like, a balance of good physical and mental health,
Yes. Hmm.
that's a great example of that.
It is
The way
absolutely.
he uses his gym and his exercise as both physical and mental is like a textbook way to go about it. Um, but
100%.
um, but even in that, he talked about how his parents tried to shelter him in a way from
Hmm.
some of the racism and some of the other things that are going on in this world that they didn't want to expose him to, and
Right.
he still learned it, and he still learned it the hard way. He learned it at
Hmm.
a young age. So when we talk about ignorance being deadly, one of the prime examples I think about is DWB, driving while black.
Driving while black.
And
Hmm.
we talk about how early do we drive, T? We're driving at, 15,
16.
16 years
Yes.
old.
Yeah.
We're
Hmm.
by ourselves by 17 years old. We're driving without any parental supervision. Like, we have a
Hmm.
license, right? And we're in the car, we're
Right.
driving. But at 17, you better know some of the laws.
Yep.
You better know what happens when you get pulled over. And
Hmm.
even then, you feel like you have to know as much as the person whose job it is to know in order to give
Right.
yourself a chance to get out of that situation, and go back home.
Right.
You think about having to constantly just know so much about everything.
Hmm.
When we talk about adding to our trauma, like we're brought into this world
Hmm.
facing an uphill battle because of what we look like. So you
Right.
think about just having to know so much so young, just to give yourself a fighting chance at making the playing field somewhat equal.
Hmm.
One of your other guests was talking about the woman who works in the STEM field. He
Yes.
talked about
Yes.
how, being, the only woman of color, the only woman of color, just the only
Yeah.
woman of color, not even black women, the only woman of
Well.
color in the
Right.
room, and
Hmm.
she wasn't even sure how much or how little she should say in that space.
Hmm.
She has a place at the table, and she's qualified to be there. But
Hmm.
because of all that stuff that's in here and
Hmm.
on our hearts for so long, we're not
Hmm.
sure what to do when we get there. That trauma is
100%.
just oppressing us on top of white supremacy oppressing us. Like, our own trauma is
Right.
suppressing us too, and
Hmm.
that just it just compounds and compounds and compounds.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
when we start to speak up and we start to fight for our rights and we start to do things like we're doing right now
Yeah.
and start to have people listen in to us,
Hmm.
things like this make me so nervous, man. Even though I think I'm a relatively smart guy and I
You
have
are.
some information, I
Hmm.
feel like I have to be spot on everything. Because if
Hmm.
I have one misstep, one slightly inaccurate fact, or I didn't close the loop on something,
Right.
someone else is going to unravel everything that I just
Everything.
said. And now everything I said means nothing because of
Hmm.
one thing that I said. So I
Hmm.
have to know stats.
Hmm.
I have to know history. I
Hmm.
have to know law. I have to know all these different compartments because if I don't, it'll be used against me. And now all of a sudden, my story is invalid because I
Hmm.
didn't know something that I didn't know I needed to know.
Hmm.
Deadly.